What's up, y'all, man? Today we're going to be checking out one Super Bowl equals 104 World Cups. Friday. That is crazy. I almost couldn't even finish the sentence, man, because that's unfathomable, okay? Now, I don't know if they're talking about revenue or if they're talking about watch hours, viewers. I mean, they could be talking about them all, man. We're going to find out. Let's do it.
What would you say is bigger, the Super Bowl or the World Cup final?
The Super Bowl. You know, the fan base is bigger.
It's the gladiator sport of the current day.
This is the toughest game. This is the hardest game you'll ever play.
I would say the Super Bowl.
Get hit by a bus at 30 miles an hour is different than kicking a ball into a net.
Whenever a clip like this goes viral, you just know the comments will be brutal. For many, it's the perfect ground to make fun of American sports fans. The truth is, to football fans around the world, the comparison feels laughable. How can a single American event even come close to the biggest sporting spectacle in the world? This debate has been around for a while, but this year it feels a little different. Because only a few months after Super Bowl 60, the World Cup will also take place in the US, so the discourse is back again, bigger than ever. But from a purely statistical point of view, there really is no debate. The World Cup blows the Super Bowl out of the water. So despite all that, why does the World Cup pale in comparison to the Super Bowl for American audiences? What do the numbers really say? And are the two sporting worlds finally learning from each other? This is Football Explained.
Sheesh, man. Yo, 4 billion people. Half the world. Insane, man.
One of the most defining moments of Michael Jackson's career didn't happen on a world tour. It happened at the Super Bowl halftime show in 1993. Decades later, it's still part of the conversation. And that captures the unique power of America's cultural exports, where music, television, and sport often share the same stage. That context matters when Americans describe the Super Bowl as the biggest sporting event in the world.
Okay, now, before we get more into that, I heard they might be doing a show like that for the World Cup now. So, I mean, we're not going to have nothing no more.
Beyond the US, that framing often lands badly, because in football culture, the talking is done on the pitch. Everything else is noise, which makes the Super Bowl feel like the antithesis of football. From an ideological standpoint, football has little tolerance for what it sees as gimmicks. Any change in familiarity and suddenly, the game's gone. So when the flagship football event, the World Cup, gets dragged into the same sentence as quote-unquote an unserious American sport, the football faithful find it straight up offensive. The reaction is usually mockery, not debate. Inside the US, though, the Super Bowl occupies a very different space. It happens every year. Friends, families, and workplaces revolve around it. It's an annual social ritual. Beyond the game itself, the halftime show sits at the center of the event.
The Super Bowl is the culmination, obviously, of the season. It is the most watched event every year on television.
That was Bob Dorfman, a sports market analyst based in the United States.
It far exceeds anything else. The halftime show has become a huge event. Some people just watch it to see who's going to be performing at halftime.
Well,
I think that is true for the US. You know, I think specifically, and I know like ladies won't even watch football. They won't even watch American football. They just watch the halftime show and turn it off. That's it. It's crazy.
Football fans obsess over jersey drops. The NFL world speculates for months about which artist will headline halftime, and music is only half the story. TV commercials are the other half of the equation.
The interesting thing is that people don't just watch it for the game. They watch it for the commercials. It's kind of the one event where people don't turn off the commercials. It's become part of the show.
Super Bowl ads are treated less like interruptions and more like premieres.
Favorite traditions this time of year, our Super Bowl commercial kickoff. Every year, we bring you a first look at the commercials that everybody's going to be talking about. So, first up, Pepsi. Their ad this year features a soda-loving Poland.
They do get creative, though.
This can be heavy.
A 30-second commercial during Super Bowl 60 costs about $8 million on average. Some companies could go on to pay $10 million or more. In comparison, football's continuous format leaves little room for in-game commercials. Again, apples and oranges here, but the advertising revenue for football is far less concentrated and far less lucrative than the Super Bowls. These ads, like the halftime shows themselves, have become cultural landmarks, not just in America, but globally. In fact, the attention of Super Bowl is so lucrative that the halftime artists don't even get paid for their performances.
That's true.
And yet, despite all of this spectacle, the World Cup still eclipses the Super Bowl by a long shot. We'll get to the numbers shortly, but in early 2025, FIFA President Gianni Infantino threw fuel on the fire with a comparison that didn't go down well at all.
I wonder what he said. He said this? Did he say
this part of the plan in expanding it to give some of these nations the opportunity to have that moment, to have that celebration?
Well, 100%. The World Cup next year, the FIFA World Cup, Canada, Mexico, United States. As you said, 104 matches, 104 Super Bowls, actually, in 1 month here.
This was Gianni Infantino's attempt to explain the scale of the World Cup to an American audience, that with 104 matches in the tournament, each one is effectively a Super Bowl-level event. But is that really a fair comparison? Before the numbers, one quick clarification. When people say World Cup finals, they usually mean the entire tournament.
Wow, and what's crazy, think about, one match might even be 5 times a Super Bowl, just one of the matches. Sheesh.
Final, singular, is just the last match. And that distinction matters when numbers enter the picture.
The only true comparison you can make is the World Cup final versus the Super Bowl. Obviously, the World Cup is a series of matches. The Super Bowl is one match. But if you look at the final of the World Cup versus the final of the Super Bowl, the World Cup viewership is 10 times, dwarfs the Super Bowl in terms of importance and viewership.
Let's take a look at the top 5 most watched games in Qatar 2022. Argentina versus France in the World Cup final drew an average live audience of 570.8 million people. These are not cumulative totals. These are people watching the same match at the same time. Now compare that to the Super Bowl. Super Bowl 59 averaged 127.7 million viewers in the United States. With a population of 342 million, that means over 37% of the country was tuned into a single game. So, it makes sense why the Super Bowl feels enormous inside America. But globally, in 2022, the world's population stood at roughly 8 billion. That means close to 7% of the entire planet watched the World Cup final live. Let that sit for a second. 7% of the entire planet. There's no real comparison when you go head-to-head, but this is where context matters. The World Cup happens once every 4 years, whereas the Super Bowl happens every year.
I think what Infantino is doing is adding up the viewership of every World Cup game and comparing that to the one Super Bowl. That does not make sense.
Okay,
but to say that it's
that's a good
104 times is ridiculous.
Super Bowl figures are measured as average minute audiences within the US, and they spike sharply around halftime. One event spreads attention across a month, every 4 years. The other concentrates it into a single night, every year. That also explains why not every World Cup match carries equal weight. Group games don't pull final-level audiences, and that doesn't diminish the tournament. It shows how scale distributes itself across several matches. In the NFL, even regular season games can rival or exceed many World Cup group stage audiences. A Thanksgiving game alone can reach nearly 40 million viewers inside the US. So perhaps the Champions League final is a fairer comparison, where the numbers are slightly closer, and comparing it to every World Cup match moves the story in the other direction. If anything, these numbers clarify what each event is designed to do. The World Cup maximizes reach. The Super Bowl maximizes concentration. Once that distinction is clear, the question shifts. And while the rest of the world keeps arguing about which is bigger, the sports organizations are playing a much bigger game. Sure, these are two very different sports, but the more interesting story is what they've both figured out along the way, that the best outcome is borrowing from one another. And over the past decade, especially in recent years, that's exactly what's been happening. Football, for example, has increasingly leaned into eventization. Opening ceremonies have always mattered at the World Cup, but live performances tied to match days are relatively new. The 2026 World Cup final is set to feature a Super Bowl-style halftime show, and before that, Champions League experimented with pre-match concerts featuring artists like Lenny Kravitz, Dua Lipa, and Linkin Park. These moments have become part of football culture, even if the reception is still mixed. Some broadcasters have even opted not to broadcast the concerts live, but instead focus on the pre-match analysis.
Interesting thing to me is that they just announced that there's going to be hydration breaks during each half of every World Cup game, no matter what the weather is. And that presents an opportunity for advertisers to spend money, which has always been a difficulty for soccer to catch on in America, is because there really isn't an opportunity for advertisers to spend money and run commercials. So allowing that to happen for 3 minutes, sort of turning the World Cup, instead of halves, turning it into quarters, which makes it more like a football game.
Wow. So I'm curious, what do y'all feel about that? Because if they turn things into quarters, I feel like that could really, really change the pacing of football up a lot. So I'm kind of curious to see how people are feeling about that one.
I know that all the advertisers, everybody who wants to sponsor World Cup games here is loving that they can, buy time and run ads.
Fans
and
wouldn't like
people
it,
and build their audience.
The NFL, on the other hand, has been looking outward. It's actively pushing the sport beyond the United States to globalize it, something football has been doing for over a century. The clearest example is the NFL International Series, which began in London in 2007 and has since expanded into Germany, Mexico, and now South America and Australia. And to host these games, the NFL partners with, guess who, football clubs and their stadiums. The NFL regular season games have been played at Wembley, Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, Allianz Arena, and even at the legendary Estadio Azteca. In fact, they just recently inked a multi-year deal for regular season games to keep playing at Real Madrid's Bernabeu. On the other hand, the NFL stadiums are being prepped for the World Cup too. This underscores how deep into football territory the NFL has gone. If the trend continues and the NFL keeps pushing into new markets, there could one day be a Super Bowl outside of America. NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell has said an international Super Bowl isn't unthinkable long term, especially if the league ever adds a team outside the US. But even then, this comparison may never truly fade. And maybe that's the wrong question to even begin with. Because despite everything, the World Cup might always be the biggest sporting event on Earth. That part isn't up for debate. But the Super Bowl proves something important. That when you create a sense of belonging and build a strong culture, you will get fandom that will last generations. And to these fans, nothing else matters. So, perhaps, at their core, the two sports might be more alike than they are different.
Wow, that was cool. Yeah, this video was excellent.
World Cup final this time, it's getting a halftime show. So
I gotta say, here's their information right here if you guys want to check them out.
America, the way they do sports is remarkable, and we can obviously take
and they showing love,
loads
man.
of pages from their book, but it's the World Cup. Everyone knows about it, and everyone wants to win it. If you live outside America, you probably watch the Super Bowl, but you're not overly bothered about it. Whereas everyone wants to watch the World Cup. Even if you don't like sports, you watch the World Cup. So yeah, 1,000,000% bigger.
Let's think. A raise of hands. Would anyone actually watch the Super Bowl if it's on? You would. Three.
Okay, a few of them would watch. All right. Yeah, it's definitely a different world, man. I gotta say, I like that this video was not negative about the Super Bowl, though. I felt like it still kind of paid its respect to the Super Bowl and what the Super Bowl has been able to achieve as far as its fandom, while also kind of stating the obvious and just how much bigger the World Cup is, So I want to hear you guys' take on the quarters, though. If they were to switch to quarters, I feel like that would change a lot and probably cause an outrage, But man, excellently done video. So thank you guys for recommending it. I appreciate it. Peace.